Hi friends, in this video I'm going to show you how to achieve the chippy finish with Shackteau Interiors Milk Paint. First I started by sanding the top down with 80 grit. I know that I'm not going to paint this and I wanted the wood grain to show through. Next I decided to take off all the hardware, including the hinges for the doors. Since I want a chippy finish, I'm not going to scuff sand or clean my piece. Here I am mixing up Kettle Cove green. I used 1 part water to 1 part powder. If you want a chippy finish, do not add in the extra bond. So here I am painting on my first coat. As you can see, I'm painting only the body because I'm going to be staining the top. So my first coat is on. I'm gonna wait for it to dry and see if we get any chippy action. Now that it is dry, I can see that just the sides ended up chipping a lot. So if you can see here, the drawers aren't as chippy, but the sides are really chippy. So much so that if I take a brush, the paint's just flaking right off. So every piece is different. You may not get any chipping, you may get too much chipping like this, or you might get the perfect amount of chippy. But if this is too much, you can always sand it off. So I decided to sand down just the sides there in that area and start over. So here you can see I am using my sander and sanding the paint off down to pretty much bare wood. From here, if you want, you can add in extra bond to this area to ensure that the paint won't chip again, or you can do what I did and just paint it again and see what happens. So I decided to paint the sides again without the bond and see what happens. So once I repainted the sides, I went ahead and put the second coat on the entire piece. So as you can see, the sides that I redid ended up soaking right into the bare wood, so I did not get any chippy on them. But if you look and see, I left some of the original chippy because I loved how it framed out that side there. On your chippy pieces, you can have some control over it where you can add in extra bond on some areas of the piece, or you can sand down to bare wood on some of your pieces, and that way the milk paint will soak right in. Here I am painting the second coat just on those side panels. So there's several ways you can deal with the chippiness. I decided to use a brush on this piece at first to see how much of the paint was going to chip off. So once I used the brush to brush away any of the chips, I grabbed my 220 sanding block and got to sanding the drawers. As you can see, the paint is flaking kind of in the corners there and not so much in the middle. This is personally my favorite look, but with distressing, I feel like it's more of a personal preference. So you can always go ahead and distress more with a lower grit sanding block. As we go along on this piece, I'm using my 220 grit block, and you'll see that I end up going a little heavier in some areas than others. So here's a closer look at the paint chipping off with the 220 grit block. This is what I love about milk paint. It gives that like authentic aged look rather than just a distressed look where the paint just naturally looks like it worn off there. I'm using the same method on the doors, and as you can see there, I'm getting a little heavier chipping in that one area on the edge there. So I like to put the pieces back together, the drawers in and the doors back in, to see how my piece looks all put together, and I can see where some spots are distressed more than others, and this way I can kind of get an idea of how my piece is going to look. So you'll see that I have two sanding blocks now. One is a 220 grit and the other is a lower grit. I'm going to use the lower grit paper in some areas to make the distressing a little bit heavier. So once I'm done with my sanding, I use a tack cloth to clean off all the dust. So here's a closer look at the chipping I got on the bottom drawer and the doors. Everything looks great to me. I'm happy with the way it turned out. So once it's clean, now it's time to seal it. I'm using our furniture wax and basically just using a microfiber cloth to buff it in little circles, and I'll let that sit for about a half hour, and then I wipe off any excess. You may find on your piece that you need to sand the chipping a couple times before you seal it, because some pieces can get chippier than others. It's always a surprise when you're doing a chippy finish. So let's not forget about the top. Here I am doing my second sanding. I'm going to be staining the top to match the bottom areas where you can see the wood poking through. So I'm going to stain this just a little bit darker. As you see here, I am putting on one coat of stain, and I'm going to let this dry overnight. And for protection, I'm going to add 3 coats of poly. So here's how my piece looks now. The wood top came out really pretty. I'm happy that I could save some of the wood on this piece. I added new bone knobs, which gives it great contrast. Doing chippy pieces can be really fun. Every piece is different, so it's really a learning curve every time you do a new piece. But there's always a way to troubleshoot. All these products can be found on our website, ShackteauInteriors.com, and I'll also link them in the description. I hope this video was helpful, and if you have any questions, leave it in the comments below.